Good day everyone, I am Nicole Mokopot and I am the leader and also the first reporter of this group presentation. So our topic is for lesson 3.1 is about the disaster risk reduction and management, concepts, principles, and trends. So moving forward to the learning objectives of this lesson, so at the end of the session, students are expected to define disaster, hazard, risk, elements at risk, vulnerability, capacity, response, relief, rehabilitation, reconstruction, development, mitigation, preparedness, and prevention. And the second one is to understand the principles of the disaster risk reduction management. So what is DRR? So DRR stands for Disaster Risk Reduction. So this term is used for reducing and preventing disaster risk. It is founded on the principle that while hazards are inevitable, its adverse effects like lost lives and destruction of property are not. Therefore, DRR help us lessen on the adverse impacts of hazards and related disasters. So DRR help us prevent that natural disaster like flood, tsunami, and earthquake, and etc. that we can prevent some of those natural disasters like constructing flood defenses, planting trees to stabilize slopes, implementing strict land use, and building construction codes. As we can see here on the next slide, the people are constructing block defenses to prevent the flood. And also the next one is planting trees are also helpful. So let's move forward to the definition of disaster. So what is disaster? So disaster is a serious disruption of the functioning of a community or a society involving widespread human, material, economic, or environmental losses and impacts which exceeds the ability of the affected community or society to cope using its own resources. So disaster are it is a sudden event such as an accident or natural catastrophe that causes great damage or loss of life. So disasters are serious disruptions to the functioning of a community that exceed its capacity to cope using its own resources. Disasters can be caused by natural, man-made, and technological hazards, as well as various factors that influence the exposure and vulnerability of a community. So disasters are often described as a result of the combination of several things. So the exposure to a hazard, the conditions of vulnerability that are present, and the last one is insufficient capacity or measures to reduce or cope with the potential negative consequences. So these are the disaster impacts: loss of life, injury, disease, other negative effects on human, physical, mental, and social well-being, damage to property, destruction of assets, loss of services, social, economic disruption, and environmental degradation. As we can see here on the next slide, these are some of the examples of those disaster impacts: the loss of life, the injury, and the destruction of properties. So let's move forward to the definition of risk. So what is risk? So the word risk has two connotations. In general usage, the emphasis is usually placed on the concept of chance or possibility on an event and its negative consequence, such as in the risk of an accident. So risk is a chance of something happening that will have a negative effect. The level of risk reflects the likelihood of the unwanted event and the potential consequences of the unwanted event. The term disaster risk therefore refers to the potential, not actual, disaster losses in lives, health status, livelihoods, assets, and services which could occur in a particular community or society over some specified future time period. The disaster risk reflects the concept of hazardous events and disasters as the outcome of continuously present conditions of risk. Disaster risk comprises different types of potential losses, which are often difficult to quantify. Nevertheless, with knowledge of the prevailing hazards and the patterns of population and socioeconomic development, disaster risks can be assessed and mapped in broad terms at least. And now let's move forward to the definition of hazard. So, hazard, it is defined as a dangerous phenomenon, substance, human activity, or condition that may cause loss of life, injury, or other health impacts, property damage, loss of livelihoods and services, social economic disruption, or environmental damage. So hazard, it is a source or a situation with a potential for harm in terms of human injury or ill health, damage to property, damage to the environment, or a combination of these. Hazards at work may include noisy machinery, moving forklift, chemicals, electricity, working at heights, a repetitive job, or inappropriate behavior that adversely affects a worker's safety and health. Workplace hazards can come from a wide range of sources. General examples include any substance, material, process, practice, etc. that has the ability to cause harm or adverse health effect to a person or property. So as we can see here, this table is an example of hazards and their effects. So the first one is a workplace hazard and example of hazard and example of harm caused. So workplace hazard example is a thing, and the next is example of hazard is a knife. So a knife can cause harm like cut and so on and so forth. So it is an unwanted event in a situation or condition where there is a loss of control of the hazard that leads to harm. So next is vulnerability. So vulnerability is defined as the characteristics and circumstances of a community, system, or asset that make it susceptible to the damaging effects of a hazard. So the levels of vulnerability and exposure help to explain why some non-extreme hazards can lead to extreme impacts and disasters, while some extreme events do not. In the context of extensive risk in a particular, it is often people's vulnerability that is the greatest factor in determining the risk. So vulnerability is the inability to resist a hazard or to respond when a disaster has occurred. So for instance, is the people who live on plains are more vulnerable to floods than people who live higher up. So why does vulnerability matters? So by including invulnerability in our understanding of disaster risk, we acknowledge the fact that disaster risk not only depends on the severity of hazard or the number of people or assets exposed, but that it is also a reflection of the susceptibility of people and economic assets to suffer loss and damage. So that's why vulnerability matters to those people who are more vulnerable to a certain disaster. What is capacity? So capacity is defined as the combination of all the strengths, attributes, and resources available within a community, society, or organization that can be used to achieve agreed goals. So the capacity is the combination of all the strengths, attributes, and resources available within an organization, community, or society to manage and reduce disaster risk and strengthen the resilience. So capacity may include infrastructure and physical means, institutions, societal coping abilities, human knowledge, skills, collective attributes such as social relationships, leadership, and the last one is management. So let's remember that it is important to differentiate hazard from disaster. The phrase natural disaster, which is widely used, often causes confusion and has been the subject of debates. Strictly speaking, there are no such things as natural disasters, but there are natural hazards. A disaster is the result of a hazard's impact on society. So the effects of a disaster are determined by the extent of a community's vulnerability to the hazard or capacity to cope with it. This vulnerability is not natural, but the result of an entire range of constantly changing physical, social, economic, cultural, political, and even psychological factors that shape people's lives and create the environments in which they lived. That is according to Twig. So now let's move forward to the elements at risk. So it is a generic term that signifies everything that might be exposed to hazards, ranging from buildings to the economy and from individual persons to communities. And it is because of the interference with things we care about that we consider hazards as problems. So as you can see here, the disaster management cycle. So from the disaster, next is response or relief. The next is rehabilitation. Next is the reconstruction. The next is development. Next is prevention. The next is mitigation. And the last one is preparedness. So that is the management cycle. So what is response? So response is actions taken immediately following the impact of a disaster when exceptional measures are required to meet the basic needs of the survivors. So disaster response refers to the actions taken directly after a destructive event occurs. This may include, but it is not limited to, such as search and rescue efforts, emergency health care, and injury assessment. And the next one is relief. So relief measures that are required in search and rescue of survivors, as well to meet the basic needs for shelter, water, food, and healthcare. So examples of disaster relief are setting up temporary shelters that provide a safe place to sleep, food, and emotional support from trained personnel, delivering meals and water, distributing emergency supplies and necessities, such as toiletries for hygiene and tarps, shovels, trash bags for cleanup efforts. So those are the examples of disaster relief.
Hello, my name is Avil M. Malentad. Good evening, my name is Avil M. Malentad, and this is my subtopic for disaster risk reduction and management. So my subtopic is what is the difference between recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstructions. So I'll be using my Taglish language for this day because it's hard to ang hirap mag-English, no? So kailangan ko muna mag-Tagalog with English at the same time. Sorry sa ganyan. So as you can see, this is a flow chart of circular flow chart. At nakikita nyo naman dito, no, na mayroon tayong disaster impact, relief, rehabilitation, reconstruction, mitigation, and preparedness. So ang ibig sabihin yan is dyan yung pag-ikot ng flow chart, which is nag-start siya sa disaster impact. So disaster impact, sa susunod tayo sa relief, rehabilitation, and reconstructions. At ang tatlong yan ay nasa loob ng recovery phase, which is ang recovery phase po ay dyan po lahat dyan po lahat ng plano kung ano-ano po. So pag-usapan natin yan mamaya. So the another two is mitigation and preparedness. So let's go for sa recovery. So, ito po yung recovery. As you can see po sa left corner, dyan po yung picture about how recovery example po. So, the recovery means is the process undertaken by a disaster effect community to fully restore itself for pre-disaster level of functioning. So, ang ibig sabihin po niyan ay, or mayroon po akong another meaning para po dyan, is an organization's method of regaining access and functionality to its infrastructure after events like a natural disaster, cyber attack, or even business disruption related to COVID pandemic. So this is a variety of any disasters or hazards. So the recovery is a method or plano po siya kung paano po natin i-flow yung daloy ng pag-function ng isang community na apektado po sa hazard or sa disaster. So, example po dyan is example po dyan is kung paano natin i-strategize or paano natin planuhin lahat bago natin to i-execute or lagyan ng action towards the community, dun sa community na affected po ng kanyang hazard or affected ng disaster, no? Ito po ang recovery, siya po ang nagplano. So that's the very meaning of recovery, planning of any processes, progress, and strategies. So let's go for another topic, further subject. So rehabilitation, no? This rehabilitation, nakita niyo po dito sa gilid, meron po tayong picture dito which is as you can see, chair, okay pa siya hanggang meron tayong isang lalaki dito na nakaupo tas nasira siya. So ang rehabilitation is binalik niya lang yung upuan pero ganun pa rin, bali ginagawa po dito ng chair is okay siya upuan pero okay siya mauupuan pero ganun pa din, masisira siya pagkatapos. So rehabilitation, action taken and aftermath of a disaster to assist victims to repair their dwellings, reestablish essential services, revive key economics and social activities. So ang ibig sabihin po ng rehabilitation ay action taken and aftermath. So ito po ang ginagawa natin, no, pagkatapos ng disaster. At kita nyo po dito sa ibaba, assist, ibig sabihin po nag-a-assist po tayo sa mga victim, or ibig sabihin po may mga taong nag-a-assist or the government assisting the victims para maayos po lahat ng mga kanilang mga ari-arian or ang kanilang mga gamit or ang bahay nila na nasira dahil sa disaster, no? Or sa mga health nila na dahil sa hazard na katulad ng viruses na COVID pandemic or COVID-19 na virus, no? So re-establish essential services, ibig sabihin po nito ay nag-re-establish po tayo ng essential services, like gumagawa po tayo ng mga paraan para po makamit ang mga services sa mga tao, like mga gamot, pagkain at ibang essentials, no, like mga damit o ginagamit nila pang araw-araw. So ang revive economic and social activities naman ay pagbabalik po ng economic at social activities. May mga government po na tumutulong din po sa pagre-rehabilitate sa mga economics, or ibig sabihin po ay yung mga plants or mga taniman or mga tanim ng magsasaka po or kanilang mga ari-arian po na kinukuhaan po natin ng pagkain natin araw-araw. At sa social activities po ay ibig sabihin po niyan ay ang mga communities po natin o mga tao po ay on the go pa rin po kahit may disaster na nangyari. Yan, no? So let's go for another next topic, no? So sana naintindihan nyo yung rehabilitation at recovery. So let's go for the next page. And this is the reconstructions Okay, reconstruction is permanent measure to repair or replace damaged dwellings and infrastructure and set the economy back on course. So I have another meaning of these reconstructions. It's a process involved partial or complete relocations and rebuilding the essential physical infrastructure or shelter, or we call it house, so that vulnerability level are reduced and families are able to get back to their feet. So ibig sabihin po niyan, no, is that may mga relocation po tayo, like reconstruction po, habang inaayos pa ang mga bahay, meron pong tayong relocation center, which is dyan po tayo naka-relocate muna kasi hindi pa ayos ang ating mga kabahayan or ating mga dwellings or ating mga yung mga pinag-aarian natin sa ating lugar. So nagre-rebuilding po yan, reconstruction, siya po yung gumagawa ulit. As you can see na example, ginagawa nila po ulit yung nasirang tulay dahil po sa lakas ng baha. Yan po yung reconstructions, no? So bali pag reconstruction po, yung nasirang tulay is weak po yon, kaya po pinalitan nila ng mas malakas at mas hindi po agad-agad na tatap, hindi agad-agad na sisira. So tulad ng bahay nyo, if yung bahay nyo is lahat kahoy, nire-reconstruct po yan ng semento kahit half lang po, at para hindi lahat naman ay masisira. So kahit sa ganyang paraan ay meron naman progress sa bahay or sa ibang mga infrastructures na yung pag-aari, ano. So that's all for reconstructions. So let's go for another topic. Development, sustained effort intended to improve or maintain the social and economic well-being of a community. So ang ibig sabihin po ng development is para ma-sustain po natin ang efforts na kailangan para ma-improve o ma-maintain natin na yung nangyari dati hindi na po mangyayari ulit. Like sa isang lugar nangyari na ang isang disaster, isang bagyo or kahit lindol or anumang disaster or hazards, meron na po tayong paraan kung paano ito masusolusyonan. So para po sa ganyan, at least po alam na natin mga gagawin natin. And economic well-being of community, which is kailangan po natin para sa mga tao din po na mapag-isipan po nila ng maayos na dapat kailangan natin ng development. So yan lang po. Next po tayo sa topic. So we have another here. As you can see in the picture, explain lang po natin yan mamaya. So ito, prevention. Measure taken to avert a disaster from occurring, if possible to impede a hazard so that it does not have any harmful effects. So nakikita nyo po dito sa picture is may isang caveman na hinarangan niya or tinali niya yung bato para hindi mahulog. Sa pangalawang picture naman is mga teachers or mga elders binibigyan or pinapagamit yung mga bata ng mask. Pinapasuot sila ng mask para sa katulad ng COVID or virus na pandemic or mangyayaring pandemic na katulad ng COVID-19. So prevention is ito mayroon po akong explanation. Disaster prevention refers to measure taken and eliminate the root causes that make people vulnerable to disaster. So ibig sabihin po nun is at least po ma-eliminate po natin ang cause ng isang bagay, ma-prevent po natin siya, para hindi po siya magrabe po pagdating ng panahon, which is maharangan po natin, no, to avert disaster from occurring. Tulad po ng baha, wala pa po yung baha, tas biglang alam nyo na po na babaha ng gabing yan. So ang gagawin nyo po is lahat na po ng gamit nyo na alam nyong masasawi sa baha is naka-safe na po siya, no? Like if yung bahay nyo is malapit sa sapa or sa river or sa lake, river kasi yon, sa river, alam nyo na po na dapat mag-evacuate na tayo, no? Prevent na po natin na alam natin yon. So yun po yung prevention, no? So let's go for tawag nito, mitigation measure taken prior to the impact of a disaster to minimize its effects, sometimes referred to as structural or non-structural measures. So nakikita nyo po sa mitigation is yung caveman naman ay may ginagawang pangsagang sa bato. Dito naman sa ibaba, hindi ko po alam yan kung ano yan, pero parang gumagawa po sila ng kawayan sa isang sapa para po hindi po nila para po hindi magrabihan po yung baha, no? Para yung mga debris na kahoy hindi po siya maaanod na hanggang doon po sa mga kabahayan. So may another definition po tayo sa mitigation, no? A sustained action that reduce or eliminate long-term risk to people and property for natural hazards and their effects. It describes ongoing effort of the federal, state, local, and individual level to lessen the impact of disaster upon family, homes, community, and economy. So mitigation is a preparedness. I know it's not preparedness. It's a method para po hindi po yung grabe po yung impact ng disaster sa inyo. Tulad po ng isang lugar, meron po tayong mitigation na tinatawag na ginagawa po natin lahat ng makakaya natin sa bahay natin na hindi madadala yung yung bubong pag malakas yung hangin, or hindi man lang mababahaan yung bahay natin kapag malakas ang ulan. Meron po tayong sewer drainage po natin para hindi po mabahaan yung bahay natin. So yun po yung mga gawain sa mitigation po, no? So minimize lang po natin yung effect niya ng isang disaster or hazard. So another topic na po tayo. Sana maintindihan yung mitigation. So sa prevention, preparedness, so preparedness is it's preparing for something na mangyayari po. So this is the preparedness measure taken in anticipation of disaster to ensure that an appropriate and effective action are taken in aftermath. So ibig sabihin po nun is prepare na po tayo. As you can know, sa preparedness, sa word pa lang po, alam na po natin anong ibig sabihin nun. Naka-prepare na po lahat ng mga gawain before po mangyari ang disaster or hazard. Tulad po ng COVID, alam na po natin, prepared na po tayo na kailangan natin ng alcohol bago tayo lumabas. Kailangan po natin ng mask, prepare na po tayo nun para po hindi po natin madadala yung virus, no? So doon sa itaas naman is yung lalaki, ginawang bali siya yung nagsabi sa lalaki na umilag ka dyan kasi may bato na mahuhulog, and that's the preparedness, no? Nakapag-prepare siya bago siya tumakbo, napagsabihan siya bago siya tumakbo. So meron naman tayong another definition for preparedness. A consist of set of measure undertaken in advance by government, organization, communities, or individual to better response and cope with the immediate aftermath of a disaster. So another one of examples that nag-a-advance po yung mga government, organization at communities na kung anong gagawin, kung anong mga gagawin natin bago mangyari ang sakuna, bago mangyari ang disaster, no? So naka-ready na po tayo dun sa evacuation location, sa mga gamot, sa mga pagkain natin. Prepare na po tayo na kailangan natin ang yung mga gamit bago mangyari or bago mangyari ang sakuna. Yun lang po. And let's go for the next slide. So as you can see, this is all the mitigation, preparedness, again the mitigation and prevention. So the mitigation here is just stated, but it's just the same an explanation. So, yeah, as I mentioned, preparedness measure in anticipation of a disaster to ensure that appropriate effectiveness actions are taken in aftermath. So, para hindi po siya ganun po, or prepared na po tayo kung anong gagawin natin pagkatapos po ng disaster, no? Prepare na po tayo na may gamot, prepare na po tayo na may pagkain tayo pagkatapos ng disaster, no? Or ng mga hazard things or mga sakuna. So mitigation means measure taken prior to the impact of a disaster to minimize its effect. Just like I said, effect po, minimize po natin siya. Like, may ginagawa po tayo para hindi po ganun kalakas ang sakuna na matatanggap natin. Hindi po ganun kadami ang mga matatanggap natin na mga sira or losses sa ating community. So prevention make sure taken to avert a disaster from occurring, if possible to impede a hazard so that it does not have any harmful effects. So like I said, prevention is to prevent, no? Para po meron po tayong measures or method para po hindi po ganun ka, hindi po natin, hindi po ganun, ay hindi po. Ang ibig sabihin po ng prevention is ma-prevent po natin ang isang pangyayari, ang isang sakuna na hindi po ganun ka grabe. Para pong mitigation, pero ang prevention is may ginagawa, hindi po siya ginagawa pero piniprepare po natin siya tulad ng preparedness. Meron po kasi siyang mga same explanations. And that's all for my report, and thank you for your time. And let's see for Rochelle Masanged's report. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Rochelle Masangid and I'm going to discuss today the differences between disaster management and disaster risk management. So, what is disaster management? It is a collective term encompassing all aspects of planning for preparing to disaster. It refers to the management of the consequences of disasters. It also requires assessing the extent to which a community can withstand a disaster. So, disaster management is how we deal with the human, material, or economic or environmental impacts of the said disaster. Um, Disaster management is also the process of how we prepare or respond and learn from the effects of major failures of the disasters that we're going to perform. Disaster management has a cycle, and it is the process of how to manage the disaster. Disaster is one of the biggest challenges of a disaster or emergency, and management is the need to be prepared for a wide range consequences. From the disaster, there is a response. A response is to save lives and minimize immediate impacts. So, response, it is like the efforts to minimize the hazards created by disaster. Example, search and rescue, emergency relief. After that, there is a recovery. Recovery is to restore activities and resources, services rather. Like, recovery is returning the community to normal. Example, temporary housing, grants, or medical care. After that, there is a prevention or mitigation. Uh, Prevention and mitigation, it is to minimize the impacts of future disasters. Mitigation is, yes, it is minimizing the effects of the future disasters, like example, building codes and zoning, or public education, vulnerability analysis, public education. Last but not the least is the preparedness. It is to prepare for or managing the crisis or to prepare for managing the crisis. It is a also a planning how to respond to the disaster. For example, preparedness plans, emergency exercises, training, or warning systems. So, the disaster management cycle illustrates the ongoing process by which governments, businesses, and civil society plan for a reduce the impact of disaster, react during and immediately following a disaster, and take steps to recover after a disaster has occurred. Now, let's proceed to the disaster risk management. Disaster risk management is the application of disaster risk reduction policies and strategies to prevent new disaster risk or reduce existing disaster risk and manage residual risk, contributing to the strengthening of resilience and reduction of disaster losses. Disaster risk management broad range of activities designed to prevent the loss of lives, minimize human suffering, inform the authorities of risk, and minimize properly damage or property damage and economic loss, and speed up the recovery processes. Disaster risk management also has a management cycle. First is the emergency response. Emergency response includes any systematic response to an unexpected or dangerous occurrence. From emergency response, there's a rehabilitation. Rehabilitation entails the restoration, reconstruction, implementation of development measures that will enable affected localities and communities to return the normalcy of build resiliency from the impact of future disasters. Rehabilitation and also from rehabilitation there is a reconstruction. The two assist the rehabilitation and reconstruction assistance is geared towards limiting the need for relief and allowing development activities to proceed. Rehabilitation and reconstruction includes measures that will help increase the resilience of food systems in case of future disasters and emergencies. After that, there is a risk assessment. It is a process to identify potential hazards and analyze what could happen if a hazard occurs. Next is a prevention. Prevention is defined as regulatory and physical measures to ensure that emergency are prevented or their effects mitigated, and mitigation is defined as measures taken in advance of a disaster aimed at decreasing or eliminating its impact on society and environment. After prevention, there is a preparedness. Preparedness refers to the ability of governments, professional response or organizations, communities, and individuals to anticipate and respond effectively to the impact of likely imminent or current hazards, events, or conditions. Last is the early warning. Early warning systems are means by which people receive relevant and timely information in a systematic way prior to a disaster in order to make informed decisions and take actions. So, this disaster risk management cycle helps us identify and map local capacities to cope with these hazards. Ultimately, the disaster risk management or disaster risk reduction approach helps us conduct effective disaster response while reducing risk that similar disasters will reoccur. It also ensures that our emergency response does not harm by replacing or reinstating critical vulnerabilities.
Hello, hello. My name is Ken Christian Luardo, and my topic is about geographic profile of the Philippines. Learning objectives. At the end of the session, the students are expected to A. To identify the current disaster situation in the Philippines. B. Identify the recent disaster risk reduction management program in the Philippines and how it adapts to the changing disaster situation of the country. C is to understand the potential scope of disaster preparedness measures. Next is the introduction. In the implementation of disaster risk reduction management, the NSTP shall be guided with the reference from Republic Act 9163 Section 11 and the Republic Act 10121 Section 13. Next is the Republic Act 9163 Section 11. Republic Act 9163 Section 11 is the creation of the National Service Reserve Corps. There is hereby created a National Service Reserve Corps to be composed of the graduates of the non-ROTC components. Members of this corps may be tapped by the state for literacy and civic welfare activities through the joint effort of the DND, KED, and TESDA. Next is the Republic Act 10121, Section 13. Accreditation, mobilization, and protection of disaster volunteers and National Service Reserve Corps. CSOs and the private sector. The government agencies, CSOs, private sector, and LGUs may mobilize individuals or organize volunteers to augment their respective personnel equipment and logistical requirements in the delivery of disaster risk reduction program and activities. The agencies, CSOs, private sector, and LGUs concerned shall take full responsibility for the enhancement, welfare, and protection of volunteers, and shall submit the list of volunteers to the OCD through the LDRRMOs for accreditation and conclusion in the database of community disaster volunteers. The continuation of the Republic Act 10121, Section 13. A national roster of ACDVs, National Service Reserve Corps, CSOs, and the private sector should be maintained by the OCD through the LDRRMOs. Accreditation shall be done at the municipal or city level. Mobilization of volunteers shall be in accordance with the guidelines to be formulated by the NDRRMC, consistent with the provisions of this Act. Any volunteer who incurs death or injury while engaged in any of the activities defined under this Act shall be entitled to compensatory benefits and individual's personal accident insurance, as may be defined under the guidelines. Next is the picture of Ring of Fire. Do you know what is Ring of Fire? Ring of Fire. Ring of Fire. The Philippines is located in the circum-Pacific belt of fire and typhoon. This being so, the country has always been subjected to natural disaster and calamities any time of the year. In whatever part of the country, we have been experiencing yearly natural calamities like floods, typhoons, tornadoes, earthquakes, droughts, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions, which have brought incessant miseries to our people, loss of lives, and properties. So, ang Ring of Fire kay murag siya ang rason nganong natay bagyo, linog, tsunami, baha, tornado, ang pagtuyo o kanang volcanic eruptions. Next is, do you know what this picture is? This picture is the 1990 killer earthquake. This picture is about the event that happened in 1990 and called the 1990 killer earthquake. In the mid-70s and 80s, strong typhoons and torrential rains brought devastation to Manila and large areas of central Luzon. The 1990 killer earthquake that hit several Luzon provinces as well as Metro Manila and the effects of the 1921 Mount Pinatubo eruption would put the National Disaster Coordinating Council, or NDCC, in the forefront. To enhance the people's preparedness and ensure precision and spontaneity in responding to emergencies or catastrophes, the NDCC, together with the concerned agencies, conduct regular mobilization, exercise, and drills at all levels with the participation of the private agencies concerned and the non-government organization. Next is the topic about the Philippines, its location. Southeastern Asia archipelago between the Philippine Sea and the South China Sea, east of Vietnam. Next is the terrain. The terrain of the Philippines is mostly mountains with narrow to extensive coastal lowlands. Next is the climate, which is only tropical marine. Northeast monsoons happens only in November to April. Next is the southwest monsoon, happen on May to October. Next is the population distribution. Population concentrations are highest in the northwest and south central zone, the southeastern extension of Luzon, and the Visayan Sea Islands, particularly Cebu and Negros. Manila is home to one-eighth of the total national population. Next is the natural hazards. Asteroid typhoon belt, which is usually affected by 15 cyclone storms per year, landslides, active volcanoes, destructive earthquakes, and tsunamis. Next is the international environmental agreements. Biodiversity, climate change, Kyoto Protocol on climate change, certification, endangered species, hazardous waste, law of the sea, marine dumping, ozone layer protection, ship pollution, tropical timber 83, tropical timber 94, wetlands, whaling, is signed but not ratified air pollution persistent organic pollutants. Current environmental issues: uncontrolled deforestation, particularly in watershed areas, illegal mining and logging, soil erosion, air and water pollution in major cities, coral reef degradation, increasing pollution of coastal mangrove swamps, which serve as important fish breeding grounds, coastal erosion, dynamite fishing, wildlife retention. Next is the geographic note. Note 1. The Philippine archipelago has been reported to have 7,107 islands for decades. In 2016, the National Mapping Authority reported that hundreds of new islands have been discovered, bringing the total number of islands to 7,641. Though not all of the new islands have been verified, the country is strategically located in relation to many of Southeast Asia's major water bodies, including the South China Sea, Philippine Sea, Sulu Sea, Silvi Sea, and the Luzon Strait. Note 2. The Philippines is located along the Ring of Fire, a belt of active volcanoes and earthquake epicenters that borders the Pacific Ocean. The Ring of Fire contains up to 90% of the world's earthquakes and 75% of the world's volcanoes. Note 3 is that the Philippines is located in the Pacific typhoon belt, and an average of 9 typhoons make landfall on the islands each year, which approximately 5 of these being destructive. The country is the most vulnerable to tropical storms in the world. Next is the what are we preparing for? What is it? Hmm, what are we preparing for? The Philippines was the most disaster-prone country in the world for the past century. Out of 173 countries assessed for exposures to hazards, the Philippines placed third. Philippine risk profile. This chart shows that in the world, the Philippines is the third of the most disaster-prone country in the world for the past century. Next is the RP disaster risk profile. It is vulnerable to almost all types of natural hazards because of its geographical location. Mm, this is the picture of RP disaster risk profile. Next is the RP disaster risk profile chart. This chart shows number of natural incidents happens every year and casualty that happens in every year. In 2000, number of natural incidents are 108, while the casualty is 641. In 2001, 72 number of natural incidents, 511 casualty. In 2002, 64 number of natural incidents, 233 for casualty. In 2003 is 112 number of natural incidents, 331 of for casualty. In 2004, 125 number of natural incidents, 1,289 for the casualty. 2005, 66 number of natural incidents, 98 for the casualty. 2006, 221 for the number of natural incidents, 1,418 for the casualty. In 2007, 233 for number of natural incidents, 1,418 for the casualty. In 2007 is 233 for number of natural incidents, 290 for casualty. In 2008, 246 for the number of natural incidents, 815 for the casualty. In 2009, 2015 for the natural of number of incidents, 815 for casualty. 2009, 215 number of natural incidents, 1,262 for the casualty. In 2010, 245 for number of natural incidents, 195 for casualty. In 2011, 374 for number of natural incidents, 1,786 for the casualty. Next is the phases of recent disaster. This I will show a pictures of phases of recent disaster. It is the Sindong Washi Cagayan de Oro. This one is the Sindong Washi. This one is the same. They are helping each other. The next one is in the Compostela Valley. Next one is the earthquake in Negros Oriental, and the next one is also the earthquake in Negros Occidental. That's all. Thank you for listening to my report. The next topic will be reported by the next reporter.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Wasala Emanuel. I am one of the reporter from the group of Nicole. So my topic is all about earthquake. So what does earthquake means? An earthquake is the result of a sudden release of energy in the Earth's crust that creates seismic waves. So in the pictures, it shows where this crust located is. Earthquake, therefore, is any sudden shaking of the ground caused by the passage of seismic waves through Earth's rocks. Seismic waves are produced when some form of energy stored in the Earth's crust is suddenly released, usually when masses of rock are straining against one another. We all know that earthquake cannot be accurately predicted. So by the use of seismograph, or also known as seismometer, we can use to record and detect earthquake. So what is seismograph or seismometer? It is an instrument that measures and records data of earthquake such as force and duration. So by the use of this, we can easily record earthquakes and detect it. Whenever there is earthquake, the following word usually heard is epicenter. So what does epicenter means and how it connects to the earthquake? So epicenter means it is the location directly above the hypocenter on the surface of the earth. Deriving from Greek by way of Latin, the prefix epi means upon or over, among other things. So it makes sense that epicenter sits above the site where the activity of the earthquake takes place. So simply it says that epicenter refers to the Earth's surface directly above the focus of an earthquake. So what is hypocenter? It is the location beneath the Earth's surface where the rupture of the fault begins. So it refers to the focus itself or the place earthquakes origin. And what is fault? Fault is a fracture or zone of fractures between two blocks or rocks. Faults allow the blocks to move relative to each other. This movement may occur rapidly in the form of an earthquake or may occur slowly in the form of creep. And we have three types of fault. These are normal fault, reverse, strike strip fault. So the first one is normal fault. What does it mean? A deep slip fault in which the block above the fault has moved downward relative to the block below. So just like in the picture, this type of faulting occurs response to exertion. So the second one is reverse fault. What does it mean? It is a deep slip fault in which in the proper block above the fault plane moves up over the lower block. This type of faulting is common in an area of compression such as regions where one plate is being subducted under another. When the clip angle is shallow, a reverse fault is often described as the thrust fault. The last one is strike-slip fault. It is a fault on which the two blocks slide past one another. So when we talk about the displacement of the four blocks to the left when viewed from either side, it refers to a left lateral strike-slip fault. And when the displacement of the far block is in the right when viewed from either side, is called as right lateral strike-strip fault. What is magnitude? It is a measured value of the earthquake size. So when earthquake occurred, no matter where you are at that moment, magnitude will be the same or how strong or weak the shaking mass in various locations. The next one is intensity. It is a measure of the shaking created by the earthquake, and this value does vary with location. It is based on the observance effect of ground shaking on people, buildings, and natural features. Intensity of shaking from one earthquake varies depending on where you are during the earthquake occurred. Or there are two kinds of shaking, which called as vertical and lateral. The first one is lateral. So in the picture, lateral movement occurs when earthquake shaking causes of soil to lose cohesion and more relative to the surrounding soil. Lateral movement can be entirely horizontal and occur on flat ground. In most cases, lateral movement involves block of land sliding downhill, a phenomenon called a block slide of bulk lateral movement. However, a lateral movement can also stretch the ground as it moves. This is known as lateral spread. The second one, as you can see in the pictures, it is called as vertical shaking. So it shows in the picture what does this shaking means. One of the largest recorded earthquake is in the United States that has a magnitude of 9.2 that struck Prince William Sound on Good Friday, March 28, 1964. This Alaskan earthquake of March 28, 1964 uplifted the seafloor of Cape Clear in Prince William Sound. This is the area of the greatest recorded tectonic uplift on land. The earthquake was accompanied by a vertical displacement over an area of about 522,000 square kilometers, which ranged from about 11.5 meters of uplift to 2.3 meters of subsidence relative to sea level. This shock also generated a tsunami that devastated many towns along the Gulf of Alaska and left serious damage of Alberni and Port Alberni, Canada, along the west coast of the United States and in Hawaii. The maximum wave height recorded was 67 meters at Valdez. So the other largest recorded earthquake in the world that has a magnitude of 9.5 in Chile on May 22, 1960. So this world's largest earthquake with an instrumentally documented magnitude occurred on May 22, 1960 near Valdivia in southern Chile. It was assigned a magnitude of 9.5 by the United States Geological Survey. It is referred as the Great Chilean Earthquake and the 1960 Valdivia Earthquake. The United States Geological Survey reports these events as the largest earthquake of the 20th century. Other earthquakes in recorded history may have been larger. However, this is the largest earthquake that has occurred since accurate estimate of magnitude became possible in the early 90s. On January 23, 1556, an earthquake in Shanxi, China kills an estimated 830,000 people. Counting casualties is often imprecise after large-scale disaster, especially prior to the 20th century, but this disaster is still considered the deadliest of all time. Great Hanshin Earthquake. Great Hanshin Earthquake is major earthquake that occurred in Hyōgo Prefecture, Japan on January 17, 1995. It caused catastrophic damage and killed 6,434 people. This was Japan's deadliest earthquake in the 20th century after the Great Kanto earthquake in 1923, which claimed more than 105,000 lives. The area between Osaka and Kobe is called Hanshin. On January 17, 1995, the Great Hanshin earthquake occurred in the southern part of the Hyōgo Prefecture and had a great impact to Hanshin area. The earthquake had magnitude 6.9. So we are all familiar about earthquake drill because usually we perform it during in our elementary days and high school. An earthquake drill is a drill used to practice in preparation for an earthquake. So let us discuss what are the phases of an earthquake drill. So the first phase is alarm. A pre-arranged signal such as bell should be known to all. During the drill, the siren or bell indicate earthquake or shaking, and the students and teacher will be alerted by this signal. So the phase 2 is response. While the bell is ongoing, everyone should move away from windows, glass, or light textures. In this phase, everyone should perform duck, cover, and hold under the desk, table, or chairs. Remain in the position until the shaking stops. So the phase 3 is evacuation. On the shaking, Once the shaking stops, teachers and students should be evacuate the school building and proceed using predetermined routes to go to ideal evacuation areas. So the phase 4 is assembly. At the assigned evacuation area, students must be grouped together according to the class where they belong. The phase 5 is head count. Teachers should check and make sure all students accounted for. The last one is evaluation. An evaluation of the drill must be conducted to identify problems encountered during the drill and how this can be corrected in the future earthquake drills. So this is the typical organization disaster control group. Let us know what are the responsibilities and duties. So the first duties and responsibilities of these assigned people is the need to have plans and develops accident prevention programs for their establishment. The second one is directs the accident prevention efforts of the establishment with the safety program or safety performance and government regulations in order to prevent accident from occurring in the workplace. And they must conduct safety meetings at least once a month. Reviews of reports of inspections, accident, investigation, and implementation of program. The number 5, submit reports to the manager on its meeting and activities. And they must provide necessary assistance to the government inspecting authorities in the proper conduct of their activities such as enforcement of the provision of Rule 1040. The number 7 is initiate supervised safety training for employees. The last one, they need to develop and maintain a disaster plan and organize such as emergency such units as may be necessary to handle disaster situations pursuant to the Emergency Preparedness Manual for establishment of the Office of Civil Defense. So that's all. I hope you learned something in this report and thank you.
Good day everyone, my name is Peter Mon S. Mamparo and I am going to talk all about tsunami. So what is tsunami? A tsunami is a giant sea waves generated by the underwater earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. Pero not all volcanic eruptions, for not all underground volcanic eruptions and earthquakes is tsunami agad. Or however, it can cause the occurrence of a tsunami. So tsunami is a series of extremely long waves caused by a large and sudden displacement of the ocean, usually the result of an earthquake below or near the ocean floor. So these are the some natural signs of an approaching local tsunamis. Number 1 is a felt earthquake. So pag may earthquake, ihanda nyo na yung mga sarili para sa paglikas. Kasi maaari itong magsanhi ng tsunami. Number 2, as unusual sea level change or sudden water rise or retreat. So pag napansin nyo na yung tubig ay parang bumabalik, umahon, pag napansin na yung tubig ay parang bumabalik, pumunta na kaagad kayo sa pinaka malapit na higher grounds or evacuation center ng inyong lugar. Number 3, rumbling sound of approaching tsunami. Rumbling sound of approaching waves. So pag may narinig kayong parang tunog na ng waves na paparating, lumikas na kaagad kayo. Kasi hindi ligtas para sa inyo. Humanap na kaagad kayo ng
pinakamalapit na higher grounds or evacuation center sa inyong lugar. So, what to do during tsunamis? Number 1, know your local community's suggested evacuation routes to safe areas. So, alamin nyo kung saan yung daanan patungo sa evacuation center sa inyong lugar. Usually, yung mga evacuation center para sa pag may tsunami is usually higher grounds talaga siya. Number 2, if you are at the beach or near the ocean and feel the earth shakes, run immediately to higher ground. So pag nasa beach kayo or nasa dagat kayo, tapos naka feel kayo ng earthquake, pumunta na kaagad kayo sa higher grounds, lumikas na kaagad kayo patungo sa higher grounds. Number 3, beware of the tidal conditions around your areas. The most notable and very distinguishing factor for tsunami occurrence of highly unusual tidal levels before the large waves arrive. The sudden drawdown of sea level resulting in a receding shoreline, sometimes by a kilometer or more, is a sign of a proceeding or in between crests of tsunami waves. So pag may napansin kayong maaring maging sanhi ng tsunami, lumikas na kaagad kayo sa pinaka malapit na higher grounds or evacuation center sa inyong lugar. Number 4, do not approach the beach to investigate. So pag may earthquake, wag na kayong pumunta sa beach para huwag na kayong pumunta sa beach para tingnan kung may signs ba ng tsunami. Lumikas na kaagad kayo. Number 5, homes and buildings located in low-lying coastal areas are not safe. The upper floors of a high multi-story reinforced concrete building can provide refuge if there is no time to move inland or to higher grounds. So, pag may tsunami, hindi talaga safe yung mga bahay na nasa lower grounds. Ang maaari nyong gawin, pag wala ng time na para lumikas kasi paparating na yung tsunami, maaari kayong umakyat sa matataas na konkretong building kung wala ng time para lumikas sa higher grounds. Maaari kayong maghanap ng matataas na konkretong building para maging ligtas. Number 6, a tsunami is not a single wave but a series of waves that can vary in size. Whenever a tsunami strikes, stay out of the danger area until absolutely sure that the last wave had passed. So, ang tsunami pala ay hindi lang isang wave na tsunami pala ay hindi lang isang wave na dadating. Yung tsunami ay parang sunod-sunod na wave. Sunod-sunod na wave. So, ang maaari nyong gawin is panatilihin nyong maging safe ang inyong mga sarili hanggang masigurado na yung last wave ng tsunami is natapos na. So what is fire? According to the Fire Code of the Philippines, fire is the active principle of burning, characterized by the heat and light of combustion. Fire can cause major disasters and loss of lives in buildings such as offices, hotels, hospitals, schools, and homes. Such disasters can be avoided if proper fire safety practices are observed. So fire in Tagalog is apoy. Maaari itong maging maring makakatulong ito sa atin, ngunit maaari din itong makapahamak sa atin kapag hindi na gamit or na control ng maayos. So things you need to do during fire. Number 1, when you're in a building such as office, malls, or etc., make sure to know where the fire exit is located. So kapag na-trap ka sa isang building na nasusunog, siguraduhin mong alam mo yung fire exit nila para makalabas ka ng ligtas. Number 2, use a fire extinguisher to put out small fires. You can also use water if the fire is not electrical or chemical. So kapag maliit lang yung apoy, pwede kang gumamit ng fire extinguisher para mapatay mo ito. At pwede ding tubig. Pero kapag electrical yung apoy, yung pinagmulan ng apoy, wag mong ubuhusan ng tubig kasi maaari kang mapahamak. Kapag kaya mong i-control yung apoy, kaya mong patayin, gawin mo. Number 3, if there's a fire that is too big to put out, leave the place immediately. So kapag merong sunog tapos masyado nang malaki, wala ka nang magagawa para mapatay ito, lumikas ka na lang sa ligtas na lugar. Wag mo nang subukang patayin, baka mapahamak ka pa. Number 5, if you can see smoke in the house, stay low to the ground as you make your way to the exit. So kapag nakakita ka ng usok sa inyong bahay, you just stay low hanggang makalabas ka sa inyong bahay. Number 5, do not run if your clothes catches fire, but stop, drop, and roll instead. So kapag nasunog ang inyong damit, huwag kang takbo ng takbo kasi maring lumaki ang sunog sa iyong damit. Instead, ang gagawin mo is huminto ka, tapos humiga ka sa sahig, tapos gumulong-gulong ka hanggang mamatay yung apoy. Kapag na-trap ka naman sa silid, sumigaw ka ng tulong. At tingnan mo kung may nakakapasok na usok sa pinto. Kung merong nakakapasok na usok sa pinto, isara mo kaagad. Kasi kapag maraming usok ang makakapasok sa iyong silid, maring hindi ka makahinga at ikapahamak mo pa. At kapag wala namang usok, tas subukan mong buksan yung pinto kapag hindi mainit yung doorknob. Pero kapag mainit na, wag mo nang subukan, sumigaw ka na lang ng tulong. Pero kapag hindi pa masyadong mainit, pwede mong buksan, tapos tumakbo ka ng mabilis papalayo sa lugar, papalabas sa iyong silid, papalabas sa iyong bahay. Most common causes of fire: arson. Number 1, arson. Number 2, overheating appliances: aircon, fans, TV sets, computers, chargers, adapters, fluorescent oven, toasters. Number 3, overload circuits: octopus plug-in, outlets, and extensions. Number 4, throwing of lighted cigarettes. Number 5, neglected rubbish, grass fire. Number 6, leaking LPG. Number 7, unattended candles or incense. So, para maiwasan ng sunog, maging alerto ka sa iyong paligid. Kung may nakita kang naka-plug in na ng matagal or nakasaksak na ng matagal, tingnan mo kung mainit na ba. Baka mag-overheat at pagmula ng sunog. Tsaka kung may nakita kang tinapon na sigarilyo tapos may apoy pa, may baga pa, patayin mo na lang. baka apakan mo na lang para mamatay. Baka kasi maaari tong pagsimula ng sunog at maging at dapat bantayan mo lagi ang inyong appliances na hindi mag-overheat kasi kasi ito yung usually pinagsisimula ng sunog, yung mga overheated na appliances.
Good day everyone, I am Winona Marie Montimayor from Bachelor of Science in Information Technology, first year, Section 8. Today's video, we're going to talk about what is landslide and volcanic eruption. And I'm going to explain to you what are we going to do when landslide and volcanic eruption occurs. Landslide and volcanic eruption. What is landslide? Landslides, also known as landslips, are several forms of mass wasting that may include a wide range of ground movements, such as rock falls, deep-seated slope failures, mud flows, and debris flows. Landslide, it is a natural disaster or a man-made disaster. Many people cut trees that should protect or hold the soil, in which when there is a heavy rainfall because of typhoon or anything else, the soil became soft and it moves in different ways. Some are from the higher ground to the lower ground. I'm going to show to you some photos of landslide. There you are. There is it, as you can see, and here. Now, what to do during landslide? First, you must prepare yourself when there is a heavy rainfall and when you are in the landslide prone area. You will definitely know if you live in a landslide prone area. We can't dictate people what are their decisions in life, in which many of us lives in a disaster prone area because we don't have a choice. Some came from financial reasons. But what are we going to do is to prepare ourselves. Number 2, stay out of the path of a landslide or debris and its flows because it saves lives. So you have to stay away from the path of a landslide so you can save your life when landslide is being occurred. Now number 3, listen for any unusual sounds that might indicate moving debris. You have to listen to it carefully, especially when there is a landslide prone area and when the weather is not good. Number 4, if you are near a stream or channel, be alert for any sudden increase or decrease in water flow for a change from clear to muddy water. You can see some signs that the water is clear into a muddy water, which is there could be a landslide. And you have to be alert. Number 5, be especially alert if you are driving. Watch the road for collapsed pavement, mud, fallen rocks, and other indications of possible debris flows, especially in the mountain areas. Number 6, move away as quickly as possible. If escape is not possible, curl into a tight ball and protect your head with your hands and helmet if you have a helmet. But when you don't have, you can use your hand to protect yourself and move away as quickly as possible. Run as fast as possible. Number 7, if you suspect imminent danger than to ponder the potential, it is better to evacuate immediately. Instead of having your potential that you can do this, you have to evacuate immediately. That is the least you can do for yourself to save your life. Next, 8, contact your local fire, police, or public works department if possible. Now lastly, our safety is the most important of all. Our life, the life of our family. We can buy things, but not lives. There are some instances that people use to save their things like refrigerator, televisions, monies, but they don't care about the life of others or they don't care about the lives of their family. Our safety and the safety of our family is the most important of all, because we can buy things, but we can't buy lives. Next, what is volcanic eruption? A volcanic eruption is when lava and gas are released from a volcano, sometimes explosively. The most dangerous type of eruption is called a glowing avalanche, which is when freshly erupted magma flows down the sides of a volcano. They can travel quickly and reach temperatures up to 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. When we talk about volcanic eruption, it because when the gas and lava are being released from the mouth of a volcano, in which it erupts a magma to flow down every side of a volcano. You can see in the picture, the magma flows down from the mouth of a volcano. As you can see also here, there is a volcanic eruption occurs. What to do during volcanic eruption? Number 1, avoid the declared permanent danger zones in your locality. As much as possible, you have to build your house away from the danger zones or away from the volcano. Number 2, when the volcanic eruption occurs, you have to leave the area immediately. Number 3, be aware of mud flows, because it can be a danger to your life, or it can kill your lives. Number 4, avoid river valleys and low-lying areas. Number 5, move to a higher ground or to a designated evacuation site. As much as possible, save yourself and go to a designated evacuation site. Number 6, remember to help your neighbors who may require special assistance, because not all of the people in the world are normal people. There is some people that has a special needs, which we can help them when a disaster occurs or when a natural phenomena occurs. Number 7, avoid contact with any amount of ash as much as possible. Number 8, food should always be covered to prevent contamination. You have to prepare yourself some foods if there is a volcanic eruption occurs. The food should always be covered to prevent contamination. Number 9, wear long sleeve shirts and long pants. It was for you to be protected from the ash. Number 10, use goggles and wear eyeglasses instead of contact lenses, because contact lenses is very sensitive that it may hurt your eyes. So you have to wear eyeglasses or goggles. Another is use a dust mask or hold a damp cloth over your face to help with breathing. Number 2, stay indoors until the ash settles unless there is a danger of the roof collapsing. Number 3, close your doors, windows, and all ventilation in the house which the ashes can enter your house. Number 4, when the government allowed us to do something, part of it is we have to clean our roof to prevent collapse, because the ash can be stuck in your roof. Number 5, avoid running car or truck engines when the volcanic eruption occurs. Number 6 is stay indoors and away from volcanic ashfall areas as much as possible. When it is safe to go outside, keep your gutters and roof clear of ash, as heavy ash deposits can collapse your roof. If there is a lot of ash in the water supply, do not use your dishwasher or washing machine. Lastly, protect your life and your loved ones' lives at all costs. Regrets cannot be found at start, you will see it at the end. Be strong and keep on praying. If you can save yourself, you can save also your loved ones and protect them at all costs, including on protecting yourself, because regrets can be found at start. You will see it at the end. Be strong and keep praying on God for your safety and for the safety of your family. Thank you and God bless. That is all about landslide and volcanic eruption.
My name is Siti Sahara Miscardo and I'm going to report issue of typhoon. So what is typhoon? Typhoon is a tropical cyclone, which is general term for circulating weather system tropical waters. The eye of typhoon is center and is very calm. The most dangerous area is the eye wall. At 50,000 feet, air is moved outward and that increases the upward motion. Typhoon force winds can topple polygas, can down trees and power lines, causing disruption in the basic utilities. Rains moving inland can produce 10 inches or more because deadly flooding. Typhoon it is also called a violent storm that originates over ocean in tropical areas and move over to the coastal area, bringing about large-scale destruction caused by violent winds, very heavy rainfall, and storm surges. The Philippine geographical location and physical environment make vulnerable to natural hazard. So what is natural hazard? Natural hazard means it is something that's not human activities or doings. So here's the list of natural hazards like tropical cyclones, floods, extreme rainfall, thunderstorms, storm surges, strong wind, tornado, and others. So when you see one of these, watch out. So what is geographical location and physical environment means? What are these two means? Geographical location is a study refers to the physical place a statistical unit is located and for which statistics are collected and disseminated or spreading informations. Physical environment is refers to the external surroundings and condition in which we live and which influence health. The physical environment comprises all the different factors of nature, including air, trees, natural vegetation, lakes, and oceans. So every year, this hazard bring havoc, bring damage or ruin to the life and property, seriously disrupt our agriculture-based economy, and disrupt the lives of Filipino families. And in 2009, a series or a group of typhoon hit the country over a 5-week period. And this typhoon named Undoy, Pipeng, Ramil, and Santi. So Undoy was the second most devastating tropical cyclone of the 2009 Pacific typhoon season, causing $1.15 billion in damages and 921 fatalities, which caused 789 deaths and damage worth $6.2 billion. And Pipeng was the second typhoon to affect the Philippines within the span of week during September 2009, causing $617 million in damages and 500 fatalities. Thousands of people evacuated before Pipeng hit, but several towns and dozen provinces were still battered or damaged, causing the landslide and heavy flooding. Santi was the 34th depression and 14th typhoon in the 2009 Pacific typhoon seasons. It came several weeks after Typhoon Undoy, Typhoon Pipeng devastated the Philippines, those adding traditional damage wrought by the preceding typhoons, causing damage $295 million and 162 total fatalities. So Ramil, I don't have a source of Ramil. This series group of typhoons brought extensive flooding, destroyed properties, and caused a number of casualties in different regions of the country, as we are caught unaware of the intensity of this. So, what do you do during typhoon? Here's the list that can help you during typhoon. Number 1. Listen to the radio or local news for updates on the direction and strength of the typhoon. So in radio or local news, you can easily update or what's happening outside your surrounding during typhoon. But sometimes this is not functioning because due out of signal because of the strong typhoon. Number 2, secure or move the outdoor items such as toys, grills, bicycles, furniture, plants, and anything movable on the balcony. Move platted plants and other heavy objects away from windows inside as well. Number 3, if you live in a 2-story home, stay on the first floor in an interior room. If you live in a multiple-story building and are away from the storm surges, take refuge on the first or second floors on the hallways to make you and your family safe in times of typhoons. Number 4, turn the refrigerator and freezer up to the highest setting. In the event that electricity is cut off, your refrigerator and freezer will stay colder and longer. So, it will make your uncooked food like meat, vegetables, and cooked food like cakes or dessert and beverages to make it cooler in just for a day or two when the electricity is out. Number 5, fill your bathtubs, sink, and other containers with potable water for using is disrupted and contaminated with flooding. So, save or keep clean water in the containers, gallons, basin, or everything that can put waters to use it for cooking, short bath, etc. during typhoons, and also when the electricity is out during typhoon. So number 6, keep flashlights, candles, and battery-powered radios within easy reach. Always prepare flashlights that are chargeable and with batteries, candles, and radios to the place where you can easily get during typhoon. So number 7, prepare foods that need to be cooked. Buy foods that can easily cook like canned goods or instant noodles. Oh, number 8, should you need to evacuate calmly. Close the windows and turn off the main power switch. Put important appliances and belongings in a high ground and avoid the way leading to the river. Bring clothes, first aid kit, candles or flashlights, battery-powered radio, and food. So, evacuate when they warn you to or if you needed to, and make sure to lock all the windows, doors, and keep all the appliances in the higher ground or put them in the second floor of your house if you have, and turn off main switch, circuit, or breaker of your electricity before leaving your house to evacuate in a safer place. Number 9, after the typhoon, if your house was destroyed, make sure that it is already safe and stable when you enter. Number 10, watch out for live wires or outlet immersed in water. Report damaged electrical cables and fallen electric posts to the authorities. So, yes, don't use wiring connection after typhoon. You have to check it first or call the maintenance to fix it for you if it's okay to use or not. So, number 11, do not let water accumulate in tires, cans, or pots to avoid creating a favorable condition for mosquito breeding. So, throw all the waters inside the old tires, cans, pots, basin, etc. after the rain that you don't need it, to avoid the mosquito will laying eggs in it, and it will cause a virus which is dengue in the future. Challenges. Disasters remain a major challenge to achieve a disaster resilient and safer community in the Philippines by 2015. So this pictures is saying on how to prepare during typhoons or any disasters in earth, like natural hazard bonds, typhoon, tsunami, landslide, earthquake, volcanic eruption, flood, drought, Climate change remains a potential risk to the country. Poverty and vulnerability conditions prevails. Fast-growing population, increasing population densities, urbanization, environmental degradation, and pollution increases disaster risk. Youth contribution in disaster management. All able-bodied young citizens of the land should get themselves involved in civic actions in community where she or he lives and should be ready to render assistance anywhere, anytime their services are needed. More than anything else, it is everybody's moral obligation to assist her or his countrymen in distress. In time of natural calamities or man-made disorder, the youth should be willing and ready to render direct assistance to calamity victims in any following areas, like sorting, loading, and distribution of relief goods. Next, administering first aid treatment on victims. Next, comforting and assisting in the rehabilitation. Next, disseminating information to concerned individual. Next, surveying of affected families and areas. Next, monitoring and liaising work. Next, civic action activities like environmental and ecological protection, river and watershed control projects, and tree planting or forest fire control. So, likewise, the concerned youth development agencies should establish coordination and linkage to be set up before, during, and after every disaster. The leadership in the youth development agencies, in order to succeed in their chosen endeavor, should A. Plan the chosen activities ahead before any calamity strikes. Join or participate in training exercise on disaster and relief operations. B. See to it that the resources are available could meet the needs of chosen activities. C. Coordinate all activities properly in the city, provincial, and municipal disaster coordinator councils. D. Organize the groups, assign the members responsibility which they feel they can properly handle. Confidence in what one is doing is the key to success. E. Work as a team. Coordinate efforts with other organizations like NGO, PO, LGO, or religious organizations. Thank you.
Our next lesson is about the disaster risk profile of the Philippines. As we can see here, the pictures that is hit by a disaster. So what type of disaster? That is typhoon. So this is when the Philippines hit by Typhoon Yolanda. So Typhoon Yolanda may go down in history as the deadliest natural disaster to hit the calamity-prone Philippines, with authorities estimating at least 10,000 dead on one island alone. So Super Typhoon Haiyan, also known as Super Typhoon Yolanda, made landfall in the Philippines on November 8, 2013 as a Category 5 storm. It laid waste to the Visayas group of islands, the country's central region, and home to 17 million people. So Haiyan was the most powerful storm in 2013 and one of the most powerful typhoons of all time. So while the Philippines is no stranger to the power of tropical storms, it was not prepared for the devastating effects of Typhoon Yolanda, which was one of the strongest storms ever recorded. So, in the wake of Yolanda's destruction, thousands lost of their lives. 4.1 million people were left displaced from their homes. and 6 million workers were left without means to support their livelihood. So Typhoon Yolanda caused severe damage to some of the Philippines' biggest sources of income, destroying coconut farms all over the islands, leaving over a million coconut farmers without the means to support themselves, as they've had to wait years for their farms to recover. The typhoon also greatly affected local fisheries, which is one of the Philippines' most important sectors, employing 1.6 million people. So many families lost everything during Typhoon Yolanda and were left struggling once the storm was over. The lack of options for transitional and permanent housing prolonged the displacement for many families, many of which are still trying to recover.
So first is a tsunami triggered by a magnitude 7.9 earthquake devastates the Moro Gulf on the southern island of Mindanao on August 16, 1976, killing between 5,000 and 88,000 people. So, before this happens, the epicenter was in the Celebes Sea between the islands of Mindanao and Borneo. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center's preliminary magnitude was given as 8.0 and the Richter scale and as 7.9 by other sources. The tsunami generated contributed immensely to the devastation. The cities and provinces of Cotabato took the brunt of the earthquake, while the tsunami generated cast its doom on the provinces bordering Moro Gulf, especially on the shores of Pagadian City. Next is the tropical storm Selma unleashes flash floods on the central city of Ormoc on Leyte Island on November 15, 1991, killing more than 5,100 people. And then intense rainfall caused the massive flooding on Ormoc and parts of eastern and western Leyte, but it was not clear why the typhoon unloaded such heavy rains when it crossed Leyte, while illegal logging and deforestation were to blame for the landslides. Geographic conditions in the area also had to be considered. The soil in the Ormoc watershed exceeded its capacity to hold water, while the central part of the island of Leyte, classified as a volcanic terrain, and that has a soil that is susceptible to erosion. Next is a typhoon Bupa, or known as in the Philippines, it is known as a typhoon Pablo. And Typhoon Pablo smashes into the main southern island of Mindanao on December 3, 2012. Rarely hit by cyclones, the region suffers about 1,900 people dead or missing. Typhoon Pablo was the strongest tropical cyclone on record to ever affect the southern Philippine island of Mindanao. The storm caused widespread destruction in Mindanao, leaving thousands of people homeless. So, after hitting Davao Oriental and Davao de Oro provinces, Bagyong Pablo shifted through the southern and central regions of Mindanao, cutting power to the provinces and triggering landslides. More than 170,000 people fled to evacuation centers as the system moved to the South China Sea west of the Palawan Island province, eventually dissipating December 9. Next is the earthquake. It has happened on July 16, 1990. A 7.8 magnitude earthquake strikes the mountain resort of Baguio City and other areas of the northern Philippines on July 16, 1990, killing 1,621 people So, the massive 7.7 magnitude earthquake that struck Luzon Island, the Philippines on July 16 wreaked havoc across a sizable portion of Luzon, the country's largest island, with Baguio City suffering the most devastating effects. Next is a typhoon. It is a typhoon Ike, or in the Philippines it was known as Typhoon Nitang. It hit the Central Islands on August 31, 1984. It kills 1,363 people. So Typhoon Nitang was the second deadliest tropical cyclone in the 20th century in the Philippines, originated from an area of disturbed weather southern of Guam on August 21, 1984, and 5 days later, it was developed into a tropical depression. Next is the Taal volcano. Taal volcano, about 60 kilometers or 30 miles from Manila, erupts on January 30, 1911. It kills about 1,300 people living in nearby villages. Taal volcano erupted in the early hours of January 30 with a blast that was so loud and it was heard in Manila. Volcanic lighting was seen over Taal along with a huge black fan-shaped cloud. That black cloud shot up in the sky at around 2:30 a.m., marking the peak of the eruption. This is the Mayon volcano. Mayon volcano in the foreast of the country erupts on February 1, 1814, burying the nearby town of Cagsawa with ash and rock, and kills 1,200 people. Mayon volcano eruption in February is considered as the volcano's most violent eruption episode, devastating 5 towns in the southern slopes of the volcano and killing at least 1,200 people. The deposits of the 1814 eruption are mainly distributed on the southern slopes of the volcano. Now, next is the village of Ginsaugan. An entire mountain side collapses on the village of Ginsaugan on the central island of Leyte on February 17, 2006, and killing 1,126 people. The landslide overwhelmed the village of Ginsaugan, resulting in the loss of over 1,100 people, including 250 school children who were attending morning classes at the Ginsaugan school. The landslide is one of the largest to have occurred in tropical mountain terrain in recent years. Next is the Typhoon Washi. Typhoon Washi hits the northern part of Mindanao Island on December 16, 2011, killing at least 1,080 people. Severe tropical storm Washi, known in the Philippines as Tropical Storm Sendong, was a late-season tropical cyclone that caused around 1,200 to 1,500 deaths and catastrophic damage in the Philippines in late 2011. Washi made landfall over Mindanao, a major region in the Philippines, on December 16. Next is Typhoon Trix. Floods and landslides unleashed by Typhoon Trix killed 995 people in Bicol region on the main island of Luzon on 1652. Typhoon Trix was devastating and deadly tropical cyclone of 1952 Pacific typhoon season that severely impacted the Philippines and also affected the coast of Indochina, particularly Vietnam. The severe effects of drakes were on the Visayas and southern Luzon, where croplands, houses, and communication and transportation services were disrupted and destroyed as a result. Now next is the Luzon earthquake. Luzon earthquake happened on July 1990. About 7.6 magnitude earthquake occurred in the central Luzon, killed 2,412 people, affected 1,597, and destroyed 100,000 houses with an estimated total of $250 million. So, on July 16, 1990, a catastrophic earthquake of 7.7 magnitude with epicenter near Rizal City hit Luzon, causing 1,666 casualties and extensive damage. The event was interpreted by people as a multiple shockwave with two major epicenters along the Philippines and Dig Fault. Next is the country has also its episode of human-made disasters such as urban fires, land and sea mishaps, and complex emergency, mostly in southern Philippines because of the secessionist movement, coupled with its vulnerability to floods and other hazards. Between 2000 and 2016, natural disasters in the Philippines caused over 23,000 deaths and affected roughly 125 million people. The associated socioeconomic damage was about $20 billion with average and annual damage of $1.2 billion. At least one person has died and has 200,000 evacuated after flooding across Davao region in the Philippines that began on January 26, 2019. Disaster management authorities and said flooding and landslide incidents is in 58 barangays across the region had forced the evacuation of 4,116 families or 19,923 individuals. According to Philippine News Agency, the worst affected areas are the municipalities of Capalong, New Corelia, and Talaingod in Davao del Norte, Moncayo, Compostela, Monte Vista, New Bataan, Maco, Mawab, and Nabunturan in Compostela Valley, and Lasang and Bunawan in Davao City. Now next is the tropical storm and typhoon Pepeng. Tropical storm and typhoon Pepeng in September and October 2009 respectively brought two of the worst floods in history of Luzon, particularly in Metro Manila and Pangasinan, that caused deaths estimated nearly 900 according to the National Disaster Coordinating Council, and billions of properties. That's all.